Let's talk about the relationship between the United States and Europe. For the better part of a century, it's been one of the most stable alliances in the world. But right now, it's fracturing. We're going to break down exactly why this is happening and what it could mean for all of us.
So listen to this. That's the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, basically saying, hey, everything you thought you knew about how our alliances work, you might want to rethink that. Now, this isn't just some throwaway line. He said this right before the Munich Security Conference, which is one of the biggest global strategy meetings of the year. It's a huge signal that the ground is shifting under everyone's feet.
So the big question is, how did we get here? How did we get to this breaking point? It wasn't just one thing. It was more like a series of fractures that have started to spiderweb across the very foundation of this historic partnership. So let's go back and trace some of those cracks.
The last year especially has really put this alliance to the test. There's been a series of moves coming from the U.S. that has left European leaders just scrambling and seriously questioning a partnership that they honestly once took for granted.
It kind of started with words. You had Vice-President JD Vance giving this really abrasive speech, pretty much attacking European policies while on their turf. Then things escalated. President Trump started openly and repeatedly questioning the value of NATO, the core military alliance holding everything together. And then came something that was just shocking, a threat to annex Greenland, which, by the way, is part of Denmark, a fellow NATO ally. This just went so far beyond politics. For many, it felt like a betrayal.
And that, right there, was the watershed moment. You just don't threaten to take land from an ally. I mean, the whole point of NATO is collective defense. An attack on one is an attack on all. So when your biggest partner starts talking more like an adversary, well, trust doesn't just erode, it shatters.
Okay, so with all this going on, how is Europe responding? You might think they'd come together with a single unified voice, right? Nope. The continent is actually pretty divided, with leaders pulling in completely different directions.
And you can see that split so clearly right here. On one side, you've got France's President Macron, who's basically saying, look, Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet. We have to prepare for a future independent from the US. But on the other side, you have NATO's chief trying to hold the family together, insisting that those bonds are as important as they've ever been. It's this really fundamental disagreement about Europe's whole place in the world.
And it's not just these two big camps. You see individual countries making their own moves. Denmark is getting ready for a direct confrontation over those Greenland threats. Germany's trying a bit of a softer approach, trying to remind the US that this is a two-way street. And the UK? They're trying to play mediator between everyone. It's this incredibly complex diplomatic dance, and honestly, there's no clear leader. All of this, the tension, the division, the uncertainty, it's all coming to a head in one place, the Munich Security Conference. This isn't just another meeting. It's the main stage where this high-stakes drama is about to unfold, with the entire world watching. And just to give you a sense of scale, we're talking about 50 world leaders all in one place. Think about that for a second. That alone shows you just how high the stakes are. The decisions made in Munich, or maybe the decisions not made, are going to have ripple effects across the entire globe.
And check out what's on the agenda. This US-Europe relationship isn't being discussed in some bubble. A fractured West makes it way harder to deal with the war in Ukraine, with rising tensions with China, or with a potential nuclear deal with Iran. A weak alliance weakens the response to pretty much every other major global crisis. So when you boil it all down, this really comes back to one crucial thing: the future of NATO. For over 70 years, that alliance has been the absolute bedrock of security in the West. But what happens when that bedrock starts to crack?
And here's a really important argument that former U.S. officials are making. They say NATO isn't some kind of charity program from the U.S. to Europe. It's a force multiplier. In other words, it gives the United States partners and military bases all over the world, which extends its own power at a fraction of the cost of trying to go it alone. So weakening NATO doesn't just hurt Europe, it actually hurts America's own strategic interests.
But maybe the problem is even deeper than just strategy and policy. The chairman of the conference made this point that the alliance was never just about military might. It was built on shared values, a shared understanding of how the world should work. And today, it's not so clear if those shared values even exist in the same way. And if you can't agree on the fundamentals, how can the partnership possibly survive?
Which leaves us with this massive central question. Are we watching the end of an era for the West, or is this just the painful, messy beginning of a new one?
The honest answer is we don't know. It's being decided right now, not just in fancy meeting rooms in Munich, but in the choices these leaders are making every single day.